I pulled up to my parents' driveway in my 1998 Toyota Corolla. The paint was faded, the bumper was held together with duct tape, and the muffler made a sound that announced my arrival from 3 blocks away. But it was reliable, and that's all I needed to get around Los Angeles when I wasn't traveling for work. As I parked between my cousin Derek's shiny new BMW and my sister Melissa's Range Rover, I could already feel the judgment. This family reunion happened every summer, and every year the cars got more expensive, the watches got flashier, and the conversations about vacation homes got more competitive. I grabbed the homemade apple pie from the passenger seat and made my way to the front door. Mom had insisted on hosting again, despite Dad's health issues. "Family tradition," she'd said over the phone. "And everyone wants to see you, honey. It's been too long." The door swung open before I could knock. Mom stood there in her Sunday best, a floral dress and pearls, as if the family reunion was a church service rather than a backyard barbecue. "Richard, finally!" She pulled me into a tight hug, smelling of perfume and hairspray. "Everyone's already here. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible on the 405. I handed her the pie and followed her through the house toward the noise of the backyard gathering. Are you still driving that old thing?" She glanced through the window at my car. "I thought with your job you'd have upgraded by now." I forced a smile. "It gets me where I need to go." The backyard was filled with familiar faces, all turned toward me as I stepped onto the patio. Conversation momentarily halted, then resumed with forced enthusiasm. "Well, look who finally decided to show up," Uncle Frank boomed, beer in hand. "The prodigal son returns." I made my way around, shaking hands and accepting half-hearted hugs. Derek approached, keys spinning around his finger. "Dude, did I hear your car from inside the house? That thing sounds like it's on its last legs." He laughed, clapping me on the shoulder. "I've got a friend at the dealership who could hook you up with a deal on something from this decade at least." "I'm good, thanks." I grabbed a beer from the cooler, popping it open. "Seriously though," Derek continued, lowering his voice. "What's going on with you? Everyone thought you'd be rolling in it by now. Aren't you some big-shot consultant flying around the world?" Before I could answer, Aunt Patricia joined us, her diamond bracelet catching the sunlight. "Richard, my goodness, it's been ages. Still working for that. What was it again? Some small tech company? Aerospace consulting firm." I corrected her, taking a long sip of my beer. Right, she nodded dismissively. "Well, my Tyler just made partner at his law firm. Youngest partner in the firm's history. We're so proud. They just bought the most gorgeous house in Newport Beach." I nodded politely. "That's great. Congratulations to Tyler." The afternoon continued like this. Subtle digs about my career, puzzled looks about my car, and endless comparisons to the achievements of my cousins. My sister Melissa cornered me by the dessert table. "You know, you're making Mom and Dad worry," she said, adjusting her designer sunglasses. "They think something's wrong. Are you in some kind of financial trouble? Because if you need help—" "I don't need help, Mel," I said firmly. "I'm doing fine." "Fine," she laughed. "You show up in that rust bucket wearing jeans to a family gathering, and you call that fine? What exactly do you do all day with your life?" I set my plate down. "I work." "Doing what exactly? Nobody even understands what this consulting job of yours is." She lowered her voice. "Mom thinks you might be making it all up. Are you in some kind of trouble? You can tell me." I felt a familiar tightness in my chest, the same feeling I got every time I came home. The suffocating weight of expectations, judgments, and misunderstandings. "I'm going to get another drink," I said, walking away. I found a quiet spot under the old oak tree, away from the main gathering. From here, I could observe everyone. Uncle Frank bragging about his golf game, Cousin Tyler showing off pictures of his new house, Aunt Patricia comparing vacation photos with Mom, all of them measuring their worth in possessions, status, and appearances. Dad spotted me and made his way over, moving slowly with his cane. He lowered himself onto the bench beside me with a grunt. "Quite a circus, isn't it?" he said, nodding toward the family. I smiled. Dad had always seen through the family's posturing. "Yeah, it is. They giving you a hard time about that car of yours?" "Among other things." He nodded thoughtfully. "You know, I've never understood why you keep it. A man in your position?" I sighed. "Not you too, Dad." "Let me finish," he said, patting my knee. "A man in your position could have any car he wants. So when he chooses to drive something like that old Corolla, it makes a statement." I looked at him, surprised. "Your mother worries," he continued. "She doesn't understand why her successful son lives so modestly. She thinks you're hiding something." "I'm not hiding anything," I said. "I just don't see the point in—" I was interrupted by Derek's loud voice. "Hey, everyone, check out Rich's clunker. I think it might be older than Tyler's kids." The family laughed as they gathered around the driveway, pointing at my car. "Is that duct tape on the bumper?" someone asked. "I think the rust is the only thing holding it together," another voice called out. Dad squeezed my shoulder. "Maybe it's time to show them who you really are, son. Not for their sake, for yours." I watched as my family circled my car, taking pictures and laughing. Derek even posed next to it with a thumbs down, while Tyler pretended to push it as if it had broken down. I pulled out my phone and made a call. "James, it's Richard Harmon. I need the jet ready in an hour." "Yes, at Santa Monica Airport. And James, bring the Lamborghini too. It's time for a little family visit." An hour into the family gathering, the jokes about my car had evolved into concerned whispers about my mental health and financial situation. I overheard Aunt Patricia telling my mother that perhaps I was going through something and needed professional help. My cousin Derek had started a group chat called Rich's Midlife Crisis and was showing everyone photos he'd taken of my car's most embarrassing features. I checked my watch. James would be ready by now. I stood up from my isolated spot and rejoined the party, grabbing another beer as I approached the circle of relatives by the grill. "There he is," Uncle Frank announced. "We were just talking about you, Rich." "All good things, I hope," I said, twisting open my beer. An uncomfortable silence followed. "Actually," Melissa said, putting her arm around me in a show of forced solidarity, "we're concerned. Is everything okay with you?" I took a sip of my beer. "Everything's fine. Why wouldn't it be?" "Well," Derek chimed in, "you show up in that vehicle, and you barely talk about your work, and Mom says you haven't been back to visit in over a year." "I've been busy," I said simply. "Too busy to buy a car that was made this century." Tyler laughed, and several others joined in. I smiled. "I like my car." "Like it? It looks like something you'd find in a junkyard." Derek was playing to the crowd now. "Seriously, what do you even do for work? Because whatever it is, it can't be paying much." Before I could answer, a low rumble began to vibrate through the ground. At first, it was subtle, just enough to make the ice cubes tinkle in the glasses. Then it grew stronger. The china in my mother's cabinet began to rattle. Family pictures on the walls started to shake. "Earthquake?" someone asked nervously, but I knew better. The rumble wasn't coming from below, it was coming from above. The sound grew louder, a deep, powerful roar that seemed to fill the entire neighborhood. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Everyone looked up. A large shadow passed over the backyard as the massive Gulfstream G650 flew low overhead, its engines thundering. The custom dark blue paint job with the RH insignia on the tail was unmistakable, even from the ground. "What the hell?" Derek muttered, shielding his eyes as he stared upward. The jet circled once more before heading towards Santa Monica Airport, its engines still audible even as it disappeared from view. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from James. "Arrived as requested, sir. Standing by." The silence in the backyard was broken by my mother. "Richard, was that?" I smiled and finished my beer. "I should probably head out. I have some business to attend to." "Business?" Melissa repeated, her eyes wide. "Does that have something to do with that plane?" "That depends," I said casually. "Did that plane have my initials on the tail?" The collective gasp was almost comical. "That's yours," Tyler stammered. I checked my watch again. "I need to go. Thanks for the barbecue, Mom. The burgers were excellent as always." As I walked toward the front of the house, the entire family followed in stunned silence. When we reached the driveway, my old Toyota was no longer alone. Parked behind it was a gleaming Lamborghini Aventador, midnight black with custom wheels, the engine purring softly as James stood beside it, holding the driver's door open. "Mr. Harmon," he nodded professionally, "the jet is fueled and ready for your trip to Tokyo. The board members will meet you there as scheduled." "Thank you, James." As I turned to my family, their jaws collectively dropped. "I apologize for cutting this short, but when you're the CEO of an aerospace engineering firm that supplies components to NASA and the Defense Department, time is always at a premium." The silence was deafening. Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Aunt Patricia clutched her pearls. My mother looked like she might faint. But your car," Melissa finally managed, pointing at the old Toyota. I smiled. "That was my father's car. He gave it to me when I got my first job out of college. It reminds me of where I came from and keeps me grounded." I glanced at my father, who was beaming with pride. "I fly 200,000 miles a year, stay in the finest hotels, and sit in boardrooms making 9-figure deals. When I'm home, I like to remember what matters." I walked over to my father and hugged him tightly. "Thanks for the advice, Dad. You were right." "I'm proud of you, son," he whispered. "Not for the jet or the fancy car, for staying true to yourself all these years." I nodded to James, who handed me the keys to the Lamborghini. The engine roared as I started it up, the sound echoing off the houses on the quiet suburban street. "Oh, and Derek," I called out through the open window. "About that group chat you started? You might want to delete it. I just bought the company you work for last week. Board meeting on Monday. Don't be late." With that, I pulled away from the curb, the Lamborghini moving smoothly down the street. In my rearview mirror, I could see my family still standing in the driveway, completely stunned. My phone rang through the car's speaker system. It was James from the jet. "Sir, Tokyo is expecting you in 14 hours. Will you need anything special prepared for the flight?" I thought about the looks on my family's faces, the shock, the embarrassment, the sudden realization that they had been judging me based on appearances all these years. "No, James, I have everything I need. Sometimes it's worth driving an old car just to remember who you really are." As I accelerated onto the highway toward the airport, I couldn't help but smile. The old Toyota would be waiting for me when I returned. After all, it wasn't about impressing others. It was about staying true to myself, and sometimes a little reminder for those who judge too quickly doesn't hurt either. The private terminal at Santa Monica Airport was quiet as I pulled the Lamborghini into my reserved parking space. James was already there, standing beside the entrance with my briefcase and overnight bag. "The jet is ready, sir," he said, taking the car keys. "Weather looks clear all the way to Tokyo." "Dish," I nodded, glancing back in the direction of my parents' neighborhood. The family reunion would still be going, but I doubted the conversation topics remained the same. By now, they'd have moved from mocking my car to frantically Googling my name and company. "Any messages I should know about?" I asked as we walked toward the tarmac. Ms. Chen from Tokyo called. The Japanese investors are eager to finalize the satellite contract, and Mr. Patel wanted to confirm your meeting at NASA next week about the Mars mission components. I smiled to myself, imagining Derek's face if he could hear this conversation. For years, I'd kept my professional life separate from my family, partly because I enjoyed my privacy, but mostly because I never wanted wealth to define me the way it defined them. As we approached the Gulf Stream, Sarah, my chief flight attendant, greeted me at the stairs. "Good afternoon, Mr. Harmon. Your usual seat is prepared. Would you like dinner once we're airborne?" "Thanks, Sarah. Just some coffee for now." Inside the jet, the luxury interior gleamed with polished wood and soft leather. I settled into my seat, opened my laptop, and prepared for the long flight ahead. But my mind kept drifting back to the family gathering. We were taxiing down the runway when my phone rang. "Mom." I hesitated before answering. "Hi, Mom." Richard Alexander Harmon. Her voice was a mixture of shock, confusion, and something else. Hurt, perhaps. "What just happened? You show up in your father's old car, let everyone think you're struggling, then suddenly there's a private jet with your initials and a Lamborghini. Everyone's in an uproar here." The engines roared as we accelerated down the runway. "I'm actually taking off right now, Mom. Business in Tokyo." "Tokyo?" she repeated incredulously. "Richard, why didn't you tell us? All these years we thought, I don't even know what we thought." "That's exactly why, Mom. The minute anyone in this family learns someone has money, they change how they treat them. I wanted to be treated like me, not like my bank account." There was a long pause as the jet lifted off the ground, the G-forces pushing me back into my seat. I don't know what to say," she finally responded. "Your father knew, didn't he? Dad figured it out a few years ago. I swore him to secrecy." I could hear muffled voices in the background, the family no doubt crowding around her for information. "They all want to talk to you," Mom said. "Derek looks like he's seen a ghost." "I'm about to lose reception, Mom. Tell everyone I'll be back in a couple of weeks. Maybe we can have dinner, a proper family dinner without the judgments and competitions." "Richard, The call dropped as we climbed higher into the sky. I stared out the window at Los Angeles shrinking beneath us, the sprawling city giving way to the vast Pacific Ocean. Sarah brought my coffee. "Everything all right, sir? You seem distracted." "Just family drama," I said, accepting the cup. "Nothing a 12-hour flight can't fix." She smiled knowingly. "Family can be complicated, especially when they don't understand what you do." It's not that they didn't understand. It's that they never bothered to ask. I took a sip of the coffee, too busy showing off their own achievements to be curious about mine. As we reached cruising altitude, I tried to focus on the Tokyo contracts, but my phone kept buzzing with notifications. Text messages from family members I hadn't heard from in years suddenly appeared. From Derek. "Man, I am so sorry about earlier. Had no idea you were so successful. We should grab drinks when you're back. I've got some investment ideas I'd love to run by you." From Aunt Patricia. "Richard, darling, what a surprise today. We're all so proud of you. Tyler is actually looking to expand his law practice and could use some advice from a successful CEO like yourself." From Melissa. "Little brother, you holding out on us all these years. Mum's in shock. Call me ASAP. P.S. Can you get me a ride on that plane sometime? The kids would love it." I turned off my phone and gazed out at the darkening sky. This was exactly why I'd kept my success private. The same people who'd laughed at my car hours ago were now falling over themselves to connect with me, not because they cared about me, but because of what I could potentially do for them. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd built an aerospace company that was revolutionizing satellite technology, secured contracts with NASA and the Defense Department, and employed over 5,000 people worldwide. Yet in my family's eyes, I was only as valuable as the car I drove or the watch I wore. 6 hours into the flight, I was deep into contract reviews when Sarah approached. "Sir, we have an unexpected situation. Your father is trying to reach you. He's called the company emergency line 3 times. My heart raced. Dad wouldn't use that number unless it was serious. I immediately dialed him back. "Dad, what's wrong?" His voice came through, strained and worried. "It's your mother, Rich. She collapsed after you left. We're at Cedars-Sinai now. The doctors say it was a minor stroke." My blood ran cold. Will she be okay?" "They think so, but they're running tests. She was very upset after you left. All this excitement, the revelations. It was too much for her. Guilt washed over me. In my desire to teach my family a lesson, had I put my mother's health at risk? "I'm turning the plane around," I said immediately. "I'll be there as soon as I can." "No, son," Dad insisted. "You have important business in Tokyo. Your mother will be fine. The doctors say she's stable. Business can wait. Family comes first." After hanging up, I immediately went to the cockpit and instructed the pilots to turn back to Los Angeles. Then I called my executive team in Tokyo to reschedule the meetings. Family drama aside, my mother needed me, and nothing was more important than that. As the plane banked sharply, beginning its long turn back across the Pacific, I realized something profound. In trying to prove that I was more than my possessions, more than the fancy jet or the expensive car, I'd forgotten that the same principle applied to my family. They were more than their materialistic tendencies or competitive behaviors. They were flawed, yes, but they were still my family. The jet engines hummed as we raced back toward Los Angeles, cutting through the night sky at nearly the speed of sound. In the cabin, I sat alone with my thoughts, wondering if in my quest to stay grounded, I'd actually lost touch with what truly mattered. The hallways of Cedars-Sinai Medical Center were eerily quiet at 3 a.m. when I arrived, still wearing the same clothes from the family gathering. I'd made it back to Los Angeles in record time, the pilots pushing the Gulf Stream to its limits across the Pacific. At the nurses' station, I identified myself and was directed to the 6th floor. As the elevator doors opened, I saw my father sitting alone in the waiting area, his face drawn with worry. "Dad," I called softly, approaching him. He looked up, surprised. "Richard, I told you not to come back." "Of course I came back." I sat beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "How is she?" "Stable. The doctors say it was a mild stroke, likely triggered by stress and excitement. They're keeping her for observation, but the prognosis is good." He studied my face. "You flew all the way back from over the Pacific?" I nodded. "Some things are more important than business meetings." A small smile crossed his tired face. "Your mother will be happy to see you. She's been worried that she upset you, that you'd stay away even longer now." The guilt that had been building during the flight intensified. "I never meant to hurt anyone, Dad, especially not Mom." "I know, son." He sighed deeply. "But secrets have a way of causing harm, even when that's not the intention." We sat in silence for a moment, the hospital's quiet hum surrounding us. "The family's been calling non-stop," Dad finally said. "After you left and Mom collapsed, everyone scattered pretty quickly. Derek looked like he'd seen a ghost. Despite the circumstances, I couldn't help but smile slightly. I may have mentioned that I bought his company last week." Dad raised an eyebrow. "Did you really?" "No," I admitted. "But he deserved it after that group chat he started." A chuckle escaped Dad's lips, the first sign of levity in hours. "Your mother always said you had a flair for the dramatic, even as a child." A nurse approached us. "Mr. Harmon, your wife is awake and asking for your son." Udgrish. We followed her down the corridor to a private room where Mom lay in bed, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen her. Her face brightened when she saw me. "Richard," she whispered, extending her hand. "You came back." I moved to her bedside, taking her hand gently. "Of course I did." I'm so sorry, Mom. I never meant for any of this to happen. No, I'm the one who should apologize, she said, her voice weak but determined. All these years we never really asked about your life, did we? We just assumed. It's okay, Mom. That's not important right now. What matters is that you rest and get better. She squeezed my hand. Why didn't you tell us about your success, your company? I glanced at Dad, who nodded encouragingly. It was time for the whole truth. Do you remember when I first started the company, right after graduate school? She nodded. I came to you and Dad for a loan, $10,000 to help get things off the ground. And we couldn't help, Mom recalled, regret in her eyes. We'd just helped Melissa with her wedding. You told me I needed to be realistic, to get a proper job, instead of chasing pipe dreams. The memory still stung, even after all these years. When the company took off, I wanted to prove that I could make it on my own. And then, as time passed, I realized I preferred being treated like regular Richard, not like a CEO or a wealthy person. Oh, Richard! Tears formed in her eyes. We were wrong. So wrong. It doesn't matter anymore, Mom. What matters is that you get better. She shook her head stubbornly. It does matter. Families should support each other's dreams, not tear them down. I've spent years bragging about Melissa's husband's law firm and Derek's sales job, when all along my own son was building something truly remarkable. Dad placed a hand on my shoulder. We're proud of you, son. Not because of the jet or the company, but because you stayed true to yourself despite everything. The three of us sat together through the early morning hours, talking more openly than we had in years. I told them about the company's beginnings, the struggles and triumphs, the contracts with NASA, and the satellite technology we were developing. They listened with genuine interest, asking questions that had nothing to do with money or status. As dawn broke over Los Angeles, Mum finally drifted off to sleep. Dad and I moved to the small sofa in the corner of the room. What will you do now? He asked quietly. About the family, I mean. I considered the question. I don't know. I can't exactly put the genie back in the bottle. No, he agreed, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe it's time for some honesty all around. 2 days later, Mom was released from the hospital with a clean bill of health and strict instructions to avoid stress. I'd postponed my Tokyo trip indefinitely, working remotely from my condo in downtown LA to be near my parents. On the third day, I invited the entire family to dinner at my parents' house. It was time to clear the air. They arrived punctually. All of them, Derek, Melissa, Uncle Frank, Aunt Patricia, Cousin Tyler, and the others, their faces a mixture of curiosity, embarrassment, and in some cases, opportunism. I'd driven over in my father's old Toyota, now parked proudly in the driveway. As we gathered in the living room, an awkward silence fell over the group. Derek was the first to speak. Look, Rich, about what happened at the barbecue. I raised a hand to stop him. I didn't invite you all here for apologies. I invited you because we're family, and it's time we started acting like one. I looked around at their faces, seeing them clearly perhaps for the first time. Yes, I run a successful company. Yes, I have a private jet and more money than I'll ever need, but none of that defines who I am. Aunt Patricia fidgeted with her diamond bracelet. We're just so proud of you, Richard. If we'd known... That's just it, I interrupted gently. Would you have been proud of me if I was just a regular consultant driving an old car? Because that person and the CEO are the same man. The room fell silent again as my words sank in. I've been just as guilty, I continued. I've judged all of you for caring about status and possessions, while I've been keeping secrets and springing dramatic revelations. That's not how family should work. My mother, seated beside my father on the couch, smiled encouragingly. So here's what I propose, I said. No more competitions, no more judgment. No more measuring our worth by what we own or what we do for a living. Just family, supporting each other through good times and bad. Derek looked down at his hands. I'm really sorry about that group chat, Rich. It was childish and mean. Water under the bridge, I assured him. Though I'm still not letting you fly on my jet. The tension broke as laughter rippled through the room. Even Derek managed a sheepish smile. As the evening progressed, something remarkable happened. The conversation shifted away from possessions and status symbols toward genuine connection. Uncle Frank talked about his struggles with retirement. Melissa opened up about her marital problems. Tyler admitted that despite his successful law career, he was deeply unhappy and considering a change. For the first time in years, perhaps ever, we were connecting as people, not as competitors in some imaginary race for family supremacy. Later, as everyone was leaving, Derek lingered behind. For what it's worth, I always thought that old Toyota had character, he said, nodding toward the car in the driveway. And I was jealous. Jealous? Of that rust bucket? I laughed. Not of the car, he clarified. Of how you never seemed to care what anyone thought. You were always your own person, Rich. The rest of us were just trying to impress each other. I considered his words as he walked to his BMW, realizing that perhaps my old car had served its purpose after all. It had been a shield against superficiality, a reminder of authenticity in a world obsessed with appearances. The next morning, as I prepared to finally depart for Tokyo, I stopped by my parents' house one last time. Dad was in the driveway, tinkering with the old Toyota. Thought I'd tune her up a bit, he explained, wiping grease from his hands. She's got a lot of life left in her. I smiled, remembering all the times he'd worked on this car when I was growing up. I've been thinking, Dad, maybe it's time to pass her on to someone else who needs a reminder of what's real. He raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? I nodded. I've learned the lesson she had to teach, and there's a young engineer at my company, brilliant kid from a tough background. I think he could use a reliable car with some character. Dad smiled, understanding in his eyes. Your mother and I raised you right after all. As James pulled up in the Lamborghini to take me to the airport, Dad and I embraced. The jet will be there when you and Mom want to visit Tokyo, I told him. No pressure, but the offer's open. He nodded, emotion in his eyes. We'd like that. And Richard, I'm proud of the man you've become. Jet or no jet. And Dad, as the Lamborghini pulled away, I glanced in the rearview mirror at the old Toyota and my father standing beside it. Some vehicles take you from place to place, but others take you on journeys of self-discovery. That old car had taught me more about myself and my family than any luxury vehicle ever could. Sometimes the most valuable things we own are the ones that remind us of who we really are, not what others think we should be.